Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge were the driving forces behind Cambodia's brutal communist revolution in the 1970s. Pol Pot, born Saloth Sar, was the leader of the Khmer Rouge, a radical communist movement that seized power in Cambodia in 1975. The Khmer Rouge, meaning Red Khmers, was a militant organization that aimed to transform Cambodia into an agrarian utopia, free from foreign influence and based on extreme Maoist principles. This introduction is crucial to understanding the context of the Cambodian genocide and the events that unfolded during the Khmer Rouge regime. It sets the stage for exploring the ideology, tactics, and consequences of one of the most brutal regimes in modern history. Two specific examples that illustrate the significance of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge are the evacuation of Phnom Penh and the implementation of radical agrarian policies. On April 17, 1975, the Khmer Rouge forcibly evacuated the capital city of Phnom Penh, displacing millions of people and initiating their campaign of terror. Additionally, they abolished money, private property, and religion, forcing the population into rural labor camps to create their vision of an agrarian society. Many scholars and historians view Pol Pot as one of the most brutal dictators of the 20th century, responsible for the deaths of an estimated 1.5 to 3 million Cambodians during his 4-year rule. His regime's policies of forced labor, executions, and mass relocations have been widely condemned as crimes against humanity. One challenge in discussing Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge is understanding how such a radical movement gained power and support. Some argue that the U.S. bombing campaign in Cambodia during the Vietnam War contributed to the Khmer Rouge's rise by destabilizing the country and driving people to support extremist groups. The legacy of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge continues to impact Cambodia today, influencing its political landscape, economic development, and cultural identity. The trauma inflicted on the Cambodian people during this period has had lasting effects on multiple generations, shaping the country's struggle for reconciliation and progress in the decades since the fall of the Khmer Rouge regime. The rise of the Khmer Rouge and the fall of Phnom Penh marks a pivotal moment in Cambodia's history, signaling the beginning of one of the most brutal regimes of the 20th century. The Khmer Rouge, a radical communist movement led by Pol Pot, seized control of Cambodia's capital city, Phnom Penh, on April 17, 1975, effectively ending the Cambodian Civil War and establishing their totalitarian rule. This event is crucial to understanding the atrocities that followed, as it represents the catalyst for the implementation of Pol Pot's extremist vision for Cambodia. The fall of Phnom Penh allowed the Khmer Rouge to rapidly consolidate power and begin their campaign of forced relocation, re-education, and mass executions that would come to be known as the killing fields. Two specific examples illustrate the immediate impact of this takeover. First, within days of capturing Phnom Penh, the Khmer Rouge forcibly evacuated the entire city, driving nearly 2 million residents into the countryside under the guise of protecting them from American bombings. This mass exodus resulted in countless deaths from exhaustion, starvation, and execution. Second, the regime immediately targeted intellectuals, professionals, and anyone perceived as a threat to their ideology, initiating a purge that would claim the lives of an estimated 1.5 to 3 million Cambodians over the next 4 years. Some scholars argue that the Khmer Rouge's rise to power was facilitated by the destabilizing effects of the Vietnam War and U.S. bombing campaigns in Cambodia. This perspective suggests that external factors contributed to the conditions that allowed such an extreme group to gain widespread support among the rural population. However, this view is contested by those who emphasize the Khmer Rouge's own agency and the appeal of their nationalist and anti-imperialist rhetoric to a population frustrated with corruption and foreign influence. This debate highlights the complexity of factors that led to the Khmer Rouge's ascent and the subsequent genocide. The rise of the Khmer Rouge and the fall of Phnom Penh set the stage for the complete transformation of Cambodian society. It led to the implementation of policies that abolished money, private property, religion, and traditional culture, fundamentally altering the fabric of Cambodian life and leaving lasting scars on the nation's psyche. Understanding this pivotal moment is essential for comprehending the full scope of Cambodia's nightmarish revolution and its enduring impact on the country and its people. Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge regime implemented a radical form of agrarian communism in Cambodia, aiming to create a classless society based on rural agricultural production. This extreme ideology sought to transform the country into a self-sufficient communist utopia by forcibly relocating urban populations to rural areas and imposing collective farming practices. The implementation of this agrarian communism was a central aspect of the Khmer Rouge's Nightmarish revolution, playing a crucial role in the suffering and deaths of millions of Cambodians. It represented a complete upheaval of traditional Cambodian society and economy, with devastating consequences for the population. Two specific examples of this policy in action were the forced evacuation of Phnom Penh and the establishment of rural communes. In April 1975, the Khmer Rouge emptied the capital city, forcing its residents to march into the countryside. This mass exodus resulted in countless deaths from exhaustion, starvation, and execution. In the rural areas, people were organized into communes where they were forced to work long hours in the fields, often with little food or rest. Supporters of agrarian communism, such as some radical leftist intellectuals of the time, argued that it would create a more equal society and eliminate exploitation. However, the reality was far from this idealistic vision. The implementation of this policy faced numerous challenges and controversies. The sudden shift to collective farming led to widespread food shortages and famine. The regime's anti-intellectual stance resulted in the elimination of educated individuals who could have potentially managed agricultural production more effectively. Additionally, the forced labor and harsh living conditions in the communes led to widespread illness and death. This radical agrarian policy was intrinsically connected to other aspects of the Khmer Rouge's reign of terror. It facilitated the regime's goal of eliminating perceived enemies, as urban dwellers, intellectuals, and professionals were easily identified and targeted during the relocation process. The policy also contributed to the breakdown of family structures and traditional Cambodian culture, as people were separated and forced into new social organizations. The implementation of radical agrarian communism in Cambodia serves as a stark warning about the dangers of extremist ideologies and the devastating consequences of attempting to rapidly and forcibly reshape an entire society. The killing fields refer to the sites across Cambodia where the Khmer Rouge regime, led by Pol Pot, carried out mass executions and forced labor during their rule from 1975 to 1979. These areas became synonymous with the brutal atrocities committed during the Cambodian genocide, where an estimated 1.5 to 3 million people, or up to a quarter of Cambodia's population, perished. The significance of the killing fields in relation to Pol Pot's regime cannot be overstated. They represent the physical manifestation of the regime's ruthless ideology and its attempt to create a classless agrarian society through violence and oppression. The killing fields serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of extremist ideologies and the dangers of unchecked power. Two specific examples illustrate the horrors of the killing fields. First, the Choyung Ek Genocidal Center, located just outside Phnom Penh, where an estimated 17,000 people were executed and buried in mass graves. Visitors can see the remains of victims, including a tower of skulls, serving as a haunting memorial. Second, the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum, formerly known as Security Prison 21, where thousands were interrogated, tortured, and sent to their deaths. The preserved prison cells and photographs of victims provide a chilling insight into the regime's brutality. Many survivors and experts argue that the killing fields represent one of the worst human rights atrocities of the 20th century. They emphasize the importance of preserving these sites as educational tools to prevent future genocides and promote global awareness of the consequences of totalitarian regimes. However, some challenges and controversies surround the killing fields. There are debates about how to appropriately memorialize the victims while respecting their dignity. Additionally, some argue that the focus on the killing fields overshadows other aspects of Cambodian history and culture. The killing fields connect to various aspects of Pol Pot's regime, including its ideology of radical agrarian socialism, its paranoia about perceived enemies, and its use of violence to maintain power. They also highlight the long-lasting trauma inflicted on Cambodian society, influencing the country's political, social, and economic development for decades to come. Understanding the killing fields is crucial for comprehending the full scope of Cambodia's nightmarish revolution under Pol Pot and its lasting impact on the nation and its people.